So I'm practicing what we preach, right? Vulnerability in leadership as a key to inviting people to understand one another's experiences, mine and other people's too. And I want to do this in the context of how we ask people questions, in particular, questions like, what do you need and what do you want? I mean, I've asked these questions, definitely of other people, and frankly, I ask them of myself often. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if we're getting it wrong when we ask people these types of questions and when we demand to know the answer. Not always, but often, especially when it matters most. Like times when the stakes are high or emotions are running high, or the experience is really, really complex. Like one time when I was a little boy, maybe 5 or 6, and I still remember it to this day, the military police officer standing in the doorway asking me, "Who do you want to go with?" That was about the most excruciating question he could have asked me. My father was drunk and he was being abusive and violent, and my mother and sister were already standing outside, shaking with fear. Tears streamed down my sister's face, and my mother was angry and afraid for all of us. My father wouldn't let my mother back in, and I don't think she was trying to get back in at that point, to be honest. I guess the neighbors had called the MPs, and my mother said my sister and I needed to go with her. She said this to the MP, yet somehow he listened to my father when he said, "They don't have to go with her. Why don't you just ask them who they want to go with?" Them, meaning us. Somehow my sister and I were being asked who we wanted to stay with that night. My sister had already chosen my mother and received an awful abusive tongue lashing from my father because of it. The officer asked me again, "Who do you want to stay with tonight?" My father cursed my mother and my sister and told me that I knew who I was supposed to stay with, and that was him. What do you want? I desperately wanted to be with my mother and my sister. Actually, I desperately wanted to not be in this position, having to choose. No, actually, I really just wanted to be in a family, in a home where there was only love and no abuse, where my mother, my sister, and I were not afraid, where my father was not a rage filled drunk, where we could be a family that was safe. I wanted to feel safe, but I didn't know how to say that. I wonder how that night might have gone if the MP had asked, "What are you feeling right now?" I would have said scared. I wonder how things might have gone if the MP had then asked, "What would make you feel safe right now?" I would have said, "For my dad to not hit my mom and for him to not say those things about my sister." Instead, he asked me again, "Who do you want to stay with tonight?" I began to cry. I figured if I stayed with my father, that would make things easier for my mother. I think she knew what I was thinking because she then said, "It's okay, Jimmy. I love you. And I know you love me." She let me off the hook. She told me it would be okay. She would have never asked me to choose. I can only imagine what she must have been going through, though, worrying about me. So I muttered to Daddy, at which point the MP said, "Okay," and began escorting my mother and sister away from the front door. Maybe they stayed at our friend's house. I don't know. I just remember my dad slamming the door behind them, and I remember crying myself to sleep. The next morning, my mother and sister came home, and we tried to pick up the pieces once more, because this wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last. I remember my mother's hug, and I felt so ashamed. I felt like I'd abandoned my mother and my sister. She reminded me, of course, that none of this was my fault, and there was nothing I was supposed to do. I still felt awful. Now, again, I know this is heavy, but I'm making a point. The point is that people's stories matter. What people have experienced matters. And if you want to get to know them, you have to find out what they've been through, what they care about, what matters to them, and why. And sometimes just asking them what they want or need might actually be the worst way to find out, because sometimes people can't tell you what they want or what they need. Maybe it's because they're traumatized and scared, like I was all those years ago. Maybe because they worry that by saying aloud what they really want or need, what they're so hopeful for, what they dream about, that they might also have to contend with the possibility that it might never come true. Maybe they just don't trust you enough, or at least know you well enough, that you'll do something worthwhile with the answer. Maybe they just don't know what it is or how to say it. But I can tell you, as both that little boy and as a grown adult today, that what I and most of the other people I know desperately want is to be familiar to the people that I'm in a relationship with. For you to be able to hear and see what I can't always say or show. Because even more than being heard and seen, I long to be understood, to be familiar to the people I care about and the people I trust. Don't you? Because when I'm understood, then I trust that what you want to know about me is coming from a good place. I trust that the question and the answer won't be transactional. I trust that I don't have to reduce my deepest fears or my highest hopes to a multiple choice. And this is at the crux of why we do what we do at Share More Stories and what we've learned through Seek, that the people that you want to have relationships with want you and need you to listen to their stories so you understand their experiences, so you understand what they value and what they care about. You want to know what they want or need? They need you to listen and understand. Then they're more comfortable with your Q&A. Just like in a one-on-one relationship, right? If I'm paying attention, if I'm listening, if I am showing up, if I am engaged, then I actually do see and hear and perceive what the other person really cares about from a big picture perspective, at least. And then if I need to know more about the current situation and I ask those questions in an empathetic and well-intentioned way, well, then that's fine. But consider the tremendous uncertainty that people are feeling in the world, in this country, in your state or city right now. Where are you on the continuum of their experience? Are you making it better for them or worse? Are you providing value through supportive, connective relationships? Are you building trust? Are you showing up in functionally relevant and emotionally resonant ways? Or are you seeing the social and societal upheaval simply as a way to transact more? Or do you even know? Because people need people to show up, not just now, but that's what we've always really needed from one another. And I think that all organizations and institutions, frankly, especially nonprofits and community organizations and local governments, human centered collections of people, you have a huge opportunity to show up differently for the people who rely on you, your employees, your constituencies, your customers. You can show up differently by seeking to understand people's lives and then seeking to make people's lives better. It's not about a menu of services. It's not about features and benefits. It's about concerns and fears and hopes and dreams. What do people really envision for themselves, for their lives, their families, their neighborhoods, their communities? Do that. Be that, because that's how you provide value through your values. It starts with leaders who are committed to listening, to understand, then committed to driving positive, impacting, meaningful outcomes. And you do that by listening to and learning from the stories of your employees, your customers, your constituents, your communities, your stakeholders, and then co creating experiences with them, not just for them, with them, that enable them to manifest their hopes and dreams. We can all do this. Let your organization, your brand, your community, your company, your mission, you let yourself be a conduit of positive, thriving experiences. Be useful. Make things better for humans. We can do this, people. We really can. One story at a time, one human at a time. I'm here if you want to talk about it or if we can help you on this journey in any way. Thanks.